Hello, my name is Stuart. I'm the unrepentant atheist. This is my live stream. Thank you very much for tuning in. So while I'm waiting for a few people to appear on the live stream, I'll just give you some information about myself. So I started the Unrepentant Atheist channel about 2 years ago now, and I've made, I don't know, several hundred videos. Mostly what I do is commentary and reaction on call-in shows. That's about 50% of my output. And the rest of it is reviewing various debates, apologetics, counter-apologetics, reviewing various programs which have been published by famous atheists like Richard Dawkins, etc. I cover conversion stories and comment on those. And I also report on what I do in my own life because I kind of get out and around, and I've been mixing with some Christians recently. So as an atheist, mixing with Christians, I've got some perspective on that, and it can be quite useful because obviously I'm listening to a lot of Christians talking on the line and various other programs, people who come onto my channel, and it's been interesting to actually meet and speak to Christians. Of course, the vast majority of the Christians that I speak to don't know that I'm an atheist because they see me singing in church and they probably just assume that I'm a Christian just like them. In a way, that's given me a good opportunity to observe them, and I'm kind of, I suppose, incognito. Anyway, let me just move on. So what am I going to be talking about in this video? Primarily, I'm going to be reviewing the line, the edition of the line that went out on what was it, Sunday the 7th, I think it was 7th of July, the one that went out with Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow. I've made significant notes on the entire program. I think it was 3 hours long. I listened to all the calls. I made notes on every single call. So I'm going to be reviewing the call and describing them, describing the issues that were discussed and giving my own take on it, and obviously inviting anybody that's in chat can also make comments on those calls. Apart from that, I'm going to be talking about some other issues, items that have been in the news. We've had the UK general election. I'll be saying a few words about that in a minute, really, and just getting that out of the way because I guess that few people are going to be interested in my opinion on the UK general election. But nevertheless, I will just say a few words on it. And I'll be talking about, just very briefly, quite an old debate that went on between Richard Dawkins and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams. At the time, that was what, 12 years ago, just a few comments on that. And I'll be speaking about Matt Dillahunty, the way that some of the calls are going, and whether, I don't know, whether Matt is really doing the cause of, shall we say, atheism a good service with the way that he handles calls. That would be quite an interesting one to discuss. I did actually make a video. I made a video a few days ago on a call that he handled a week ago where I thought that he went too far. There are times when he tears Christians apart and he tears callers apart, and there are times when I've actually supported that, because if somebody really nasty, if a really nasty, domineering kind of person comes on and is over talking and is arrogantly telling us that, you know, whatever from their own point of view, and not really being honest, and it's not just that they're not being honest, but when they're really particularly arrogant and nasty, I think that I'm quite happy to see Matt tear them to pieces. But when it's somebody who's maybe feeling nervous, they've made one or two mistakes in the call, and let's face it, it takes quite something to call in a show. I've never done it. The last time I called in any kind of show was in the 1980s. I used to listen to some midnight radio program, you know, when I was like 22 years old. And I didn't even have a telephone in those days. So I was listening to this radio program. It used to go out at midnight for all the night owls. And it would be generally on sort of current affairs or whatever, politics and other sort of social issues. And this was the last time I called into any kind of show whatsoever. I don't know why I did it. I can't believe that I actually cared enough to go to a telephone box at like 1 o'clock in the morning and phone this radio station up. Oh my God. I mean, it's something that I would never do now. I would never do now. And of course, I would never call the line. I mean, why should I? I'm an atheist. I mean, I agree with virtually everything that Matt says. I've got absolutely nothing to say to the line. Some people have said to me, "Oh, Stuart, you should call the line up." Well, why? I mean, what's the point? The line doesn't need atheists like me calling in. What the line needs is Christians or theists, Muslims, etc., or anybody with any kind of supernatural claims. It needs people like that to call in and say what their claim is and defend it and justify it so that there can be a conversation and a discussion. That's what the line needs. It doesn't need atheists like me to call in. That's the last thing it needs. And indeed, we saw one or two calls this week on the line that were from atheists. And, I didn't really think they went particularly well and they weren't really that productive. But okay, so let me just move on briefly. I can see some of you are in the room. You're welcome to start using the live chat if you want. If you've got anything to say, any questions to ask me, you can ask me anything, anytime. Obviously, if somebody comes on and asks a stupid question or, I don't know, trolling, anything like that, then I'll just ban them from the chat. So just serious questions, no vulgarity. I'm not into that. I don't. I mean, I admit that I swear sometimes on my channel. Yeah, I do sometimes, but I try to keep that down to a minimum. And I generally don't tend to like to see people swearing on my channel. I suppose in that sense, I'm a bit old-fashioned. But having said that, obviously I've got nothing against Matt swearing on his channel, and it's not a problem for me. I've come to expect it. I must admit, when I first heard Matt on the Atheist Experience, maybe 12 years ago, when I first started listening to the Atheist Experience, my initial impression was, well, actually, he's quite good. He's really sharp at handling theists who are coming on, and he's doing a really good job. And then when I heard him swearing, I thought to myself that, well, it didn't resonate with me when he started swearing and he started cursing one or two theists who were calling in. And I think I maybe made one or two comments and said, yeah, good calls, you're handling them well, but why the vulgarity, why the swearing, why the anger? I couldn't really quite understand that. And I suppose with time I've got used to it. And really, in a way, with Matt, we kind of allow him that because we've got used to him. But is that a good thing? Just because we're used to something that is kind of a bit questionable, does that mean that we should continue to accept it and continue to validate it? And it's a bit like, there are people in abusive relationships who it becomes normalized. Violence and abuse becomes normalized. They get used to it over a number of years and they just continue to accept it. And because they're accepting it, they're kind of validating it. And maybe it's the same. Maybe this is what's going wrong with Matt, because he's got a lot of people cheering him on in the live chat when he's doing these shows. And that's validating what he's doing. And he's kind of feeding off that validation. So I don't know. It's a difficult question. Okay, we've got a question here. Free thinker, how did you become an atheist? What is your story? Well, I won't go into a long telling of my story. I won't give you a big narrative on it. But I grew up in a Christian culture, which was initially, I lived in 3 countries early on in my life. I started off in the UK. I spent 4 years in Canada in the 60s as a boy. We moved to Australia. So I was living in Christian cultures all the time. Eventually, when I was 8, 9 years old, we came back to the UK. And I grew up in the 70s in Britain, where all the schools, even non-religious schools, were saying the prayers in the morning, singing Christian hymns. And it was very much a Christian culture that I grew up in. My parents gave me a Bible when I was young, but they didn't push religion on me. They just gave me a Bible. It was one of those little black ones with gold edges. And actually, it was quite a smart little book, and I was quite fascinated by it. So I suppose that I wasn't like a big believer as a child. I just sort of accepted that, well, um, yeah, there's probably a God, or I just accepted that there is a God. When you grow up in that kind of culture, you kind of just accept it as a fact. But at some particular stage in secondary school, I started doing religious education when I was about 13, 14 years old. And I saw that there were other religions. And, I thought this was strange, that why is it that this particular part of the world around the Middle East, Christianity grew out of there, Judaism grew out of there. And then I found out there are hundreds of millions of Hindus, hundreds of millions of Buddhists. And then you've got the Red Indians on the other side of the Atlantic, and they're doing, they've got their own religion too. You've got the Incas, you've got the Aztecs in Mexico, you've got Quetzalcoatl, and you've got all these religions. And I thought, well, this is strange because, surely if there's a God, this is what I was thinking when I was that age, 14 years old. I was thinking, if there's one God and the true God is the Christian God, why are there other religions? That's something that I couldn't quite understand, particularly that there were hundreds of millions or even billions of people who were not Christians. That to me kind of didn't make sense, that if there was Christianity in the Western world, then there should be Christianity everywhere. If there's a God up there and that's really a Christian God, I didn't understand why there were so many different religions. And then I started to think, well, actually, is it possible that none of the religions are true? That this is all kind of something that man has made up? That's what I was thinking when I was about 14, 15 years old. And I was studying religious education. I had a really good religious education teacher, and he was a Christian, but he admitted to me that he didn't know whether God existed. And he said it might be false. He said that his religion might be false. And that was the first time I ever heard somebody in a position of respect admit to me that although they were a Christian, they admitted to me that it could be all false, that their position was based on faith. They thought there was some sort of evidence. We had the Bible, and but he did admit to me, yep, Stuart, it might well be that there's no God at all, and we're all wrong. And that's when I thought, well, okay, it's not just a question that you might be wrong. And then I started to think, well, actually, maybe you are wrong, because it was this big thing that there are so many different religions. I just couldn't see. I thought, yes, it's often been said, I've heard it said, they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. And that's what I thought at 15 years old. And I think when I was 15, I had this friend who was a Catholic. This boy, he was Polish. His name was Jan. I used to go running with him a lot. We were in the school athletics team. And I knew that he believed in God. We spoke about it on a few occasions. And then I don't know why, probably shouldn't have just broken it to him. And I think that he just assumed that I was a believer. And I'm surprised that it was so important to him. But we were talking about religion. And I just said to him, Jan, to be honest with you, I gave up believing. I don't think there's a God. And the shock on his face was just, I'll never forget it. The look on his face, he almost went white. And he went silent. He wouldn't talk for the rest of we were doing a training session. And he just went completely silent. And it was a little bit of time, but that kind of put a wedge in between us. That kind of divided us. I noticed that his attitude to me changed quite a bit after that. After I said to him, effectively, I'm an atheist at 50. I didn't use that word because I remember even when I was that age, atheist was like, it was like, I don't know, it didn't have a positive connotation. The word Christian kind of sounds nice, doesn't it? I'm a Christian. Are you? Oh, you believe in God. Oh, that's good. You believe in Jesus. Very nice. But atheist, you're an atheist? Oh my God. Yeah, so even, I mean, in those days and now, there's still this stigma attached to the word atheist. As Richard Dawkins said when he told, I think, his mother or something that he doesn't believe in God and that he's an atheist. She says, well, okay, well, give up your faith by all means, but don't be an atheist. That was funny. Okay, yeah, so that's my story, really. So 15 years old, I stopped believing in God, and I've never looked back since that time. I had a religious phase in my 30s, where I got into Zen, I got into Eastern religion, I even went to India, and I sat around with meditators and we talked about being one with everything, and I got into all that esoteric stuff. That was in my 30s, and I left that behind. And really, since about the turn of the century, I've had no religion in my life. I left behind really all of that. And I suppose I've been a skeptic and tried to sort of improve my critical thinking skills, because there's so much nonsense out there. There's so much nonsense. And I regret the fact that when I was much younger, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was sitting in my dad's house, and some guests were invited around, and there was a man who was about 40ish, and he was sitting there. Oh my God, some of the stuff that he was coming out with, I wish that I had the skills that I've got now. I wish I could go back in time and, you know, because I mean, first of all, he was one that believed that aliens that engineered human beings. I mean, even then in the 90s, he believed that there were aliens who'd put men on Earth. They designed human beings, engineered them, etc. And I said, well, what about Darwin? You know, we've got the theory of evolution. And he said to me, well, he said, you don't believe that, do you? He said, look, he said, I'll tell you about Darwin. He went out on a ship and he went to an island and he did all his research there, and he came back and he wrote this book. He said, I mean, how can you come up with a big theory like that, just on the basis of going and visiting an island? I mean, this guy was so monumentally ignorant. Unfortunately, you know, I mean, in those days, before I'd done the reading and got the education, I I couldn't really rebut him. I just said, well, you know, this seems to be the theory that is is dominant, and I didn't really prolong the discussion because I didn't really feel like I had the tools to discuss these things, and I just listened to him. And I mean, on reflection, he was just speaking a complete lot of rubbish, and I wish I could have actually rebutted what he was saying at the time. Actually, as a footnote, that same person, 5 years later, I heard, won a significant amount of money on the lottery. But I mean, that's another matter. And he's a dangerous driver, because, as my dad was telling me, that yeah, he was around with his wife for dinner that night, and as a return gesture, he invited my dad and his wife for a meal at his place, which was in another town. And he had I don't know, he had the flash car or something, and he wanted to show it off to my dad. So he came and actually picked him up. I said to my dad, how was the trip? And he looked at me and he said, I'll never get into a car with that man again. I said, why? And he said he drove 100 miles an hour all the way on this particular road. And him and my dad and his wife were absolutely terrified. 100 miles an hour on this road. And he would never get into a car with him again. Yeah, so this guy was absolutely, I mean, in a way, he reminds me of my best friend, who's now a conspiracy theorist and who has similar beliefs, namely that aliens are behind everything. But I don't want to get into that because I want to talk about other things. But that's about it, really. So yeah, that's about it with me and religion. Why am I in this business? Why did I get into it? You know, why have I put myself out on the internet? I suppose as a sort of atheist activist, I suppose, you know, in a small kind of way, just for one simple reason, really. I really find it interesting. I find it interesting and I find it amusing, and I think that it's worthwhile doing it because there's so much crazy rubbish out there on the internet that there has to be some sane people out there, talking about things which are demonstrably real. That's the thing. We need more people like you guys, for example. You can start your own channels. You can start small. You can make a video now and again expressing your views. The more of us there are, the better. Okay, Christians will say, similar to what I'm saying about you guys, you know, critical thinkers, skeptics. Let's get clear thinkers out there. Let's get rational thinkers. Let's try and improve the world through that. Christians will be saying, guys, we need to spread the good news. We need to spread the news of Jesus' love for mankind. So we've all got our agenda. They've got their agenda, which is spreading the good news of Jesus. And my agenda is to encourage people to not accept fantastic claims without properly critiquing them and rigorously analyzing them to see whether there is evidence to support them. That's all really, because then if people come and tell you the good news about Jesus, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves the world, you will be ready to deal with that. It may well be that you don't believe that anyway, but I learned a lot of my kind of counter apologetics and way to deal with people by watching shows like The Line, watching shows like The Atheist Experience. I've watched so many shows. I've heard so many arguments, counter arguments, that I've got the tools to deal with a lot of arguments and a lot of supposed evidence. There's some stuff I can't deal with that I would struggle to deal with a bit. What can't I deal with? I mean, if somebody appears and starts talking about modal logic and using a lot of terms in maybe some philosophy that I'm not familiar with, then I would probably struggle a bit. But I can deal with most of it. So, okay, let me just move on then. Now that I've said that, let me just move on and just mention a few things that I've seen in the news. First of all, very quickly, let me just look at your chats. Anyway, yeah, welcome to everybody who's currently watching. So I started this at 23:30 British Summer Time, which means that in America, you don't have to watch me in the middle of the night. It should be daylight now in America. And I'm now here at midnight in the UK, and I'm going to be up till maybe 1:30 doing this video. So I've decided to go to bed late in order to do this video and reach different people, because normally I do it earlier when a lot of you guys are asleep. So let's have a look. Okay, language of horses. I would have stopped being his friend. I'm not sure who you're referring to there. Fekinel says, as soon as I found out there was more than one religion, I realized they were all fake. Well, yeah, that's the thing with me. I mean, it wasn't just that there was more than one religion. There were many, many religions. And I also noticed that in schools, religion was being taught in religious education. So in the history classroom, I stupidly put my hand up. I said, excuse me, miss, because we were doing ancient history. I said, aren't we going to talk about Jesus? Aren't we going to, do the history of Jesus? She said, oh, that's for the religious education classroom. We don't do Jesus. We don't do religion in history classroom. I said, oh, why not? She said, well, because it's not, it's a matter of faith. She said it's mainly a matter of belief that there are not the facts, that they don't reach the historical standard in order to be taught in history classroom. And then I thought, well, actually, yeah, I thought if it was history, if it was history that there was a God and that there was a Jesus, there was a Son of God, and who had a Mother Mary, who was not impregnated by a man. And if it was history that there were miracles and a resurrection, if this was real history, we would all be Christians. These arguments would all be over. We wouldn't have to argue about any of these things. It would be so easy. I could give up this channel and, I could just be a Christian. If this was history and if it was all demonstrated to be true, That's why when Christians come to me and say, "Oh, it's all confirmed, it's all historically proven and everything," I say, "Well, why is it that we don't get it in the classrooms? Why? I mean, in the history classroom, in primary schools and in colleges, etc. Why is religion only being taught alongside other religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity? Why are they only being taught next to each other as belief systems in a religious education classrooms? Why aren't they being taught in history classes? Why is it that when I went to the university library to find a book about Jesus, I couldn't find anything? I went to the university library, there's a whole floor, thousands and thousands of history books. Oh, where's your section on Jesus of Nazareth? Oh, it's upstairs in the theology department. Okay, it's not history. It's not history. We don't have we don't have enough evidence to establish that these are historical events. I know that there are some historical events in the scriptures. Yeah, that's true. But the central claims of all the religions have got no real history to support them. Okay, so what have we got? What else have we got? Daniel, greetings. Yeah, greetings, Daniel. Have watched a lot of The Line and Matt Dillahunty. Yes, so have I. Likewise, because I've got this channel. I look forward to Monday morning. I start work early on a Monday morning, and I usually turn on, and while I'm having a coffee, I listen to The Line just to see what calls have come in. Language of Horses. I was raised a Mormon, but I'm an atheist now. Well, I can imagine that you lost a lot when you left Mormonism, because now that I'm interacting with the local, with the Christian community, I am, yes. That's what I'm doing, because my partner is a kind of not secular, is a cultural Christian, and I go to church once a week with her. I knew that would be part of the deal, and for me, it's a good deal because I like her a lot, and that's the way it is. She knows I'm not a believer, but I just come along, and there's a big community. Religions provide really important communities for people. And I know that, for example, on the line today, I think Eve was saying to somebody who wanted to get out of Christianity but did not want to lose all the community, find an interest, find some interest and go along to clubs. You'll find communities there. Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. And for example, I go to a photography club and I like the people in the photography club. That's fine. But there's something very different about being in a religious community. And I'll tell you what it is. And this is why religions are so successful. One of the reasons that religions are so successful, and I'm afraid that Matt doesn't get this, Eve doesn't get it, and lots of others don't get it either. When you go into a religious community, you get a quality of warmth from them that you generally won't get from, say, a photography club, an athletics club, a surfing club, or what have you. I don't know what you think about that, but I've noticed this when I go along to that church every Sunday, and then afterwards there is a coffee morning. Sorry, there's a half an hour coffee meeting, a social gathering in the church hall, and the warmth and the smiles that you get and the openness of people is of an entirely different quality compared with, for example, when you go to, as I say, a photography club or other types of organizations. It's something completely different. And that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult for people to break out of religions, because they're losing so much. I actually had a dream not too long ago, a really crazy dream. So in this church that I go to, there are two ministers, and one of them, I actually dreamed that I bumped into him one day when I was out and around in the shops, and we went and had a cup of coffee, and I said to him, by the way, I come to church every week, but I should probably tell you I'm not a believer. And in my dream, he's telling me, well, Stuart, you know something? Um, uh, I'm losing my faith. I'm losing my faith, and I'm thinking about giving up the cloth. I'm thinking about walking away from the church because I don't think it's true either. And in my dream, I'm saying to him, oh, now hold on, wait a minute. Think this through very carefully, because you're about my age. You're sort of 60 years old. A lot of people's faith will be rocked if you leave the church. Think about all the people. Think about what you'll lose: the community, your job, and you'll lose all that. Plus, you'll damage the community. Think carefully before you give all that up. Now, I'm dreaming this about myself saying these things, and I'd like to think that if that really did happen, I would be saying to him, well, great. It's better to embrace reality than believe in something of that magnitude that has got really so little evidence to support it. So I can't believe that I had that dream where I was telling him, bolster the community. You've helped to grow this community. Don't destroy it all. But yeah, so community is such a big thing, and you can't really easily replace that. Yeah. So you were a Mormon, and you left Mormonism, and I know that Mormon communities are even more tightly knit than the sort of community I'm talking about, because really it's only like a local community where people meet now and again. But with Mormons, I mean, you marry each other. I guess you kind of arrange marriages and you try and keep it all in the family, don't you? So it must be really difficult to leave Mormonism. I bet there are a lot of Mormons out there who have married, and they're probably, say, somebody who's happy with their partner, and their partner is a devout Mormon, but you don't believe it. What would you do? This is the thing. What if you're happy with your partner and you give up the religion, and you know that if you tell your partner, oh, well, actually, I don't believe in this nonsense anymore, there's quite a lot at stake. So I'm not saying what I would do. I don't know. Let's have a look and see what you're saying. Okay, so yeah, language of forces. Yeah, that must have been difficult for you. Glad that you got out of Mormonism. Of course, if you're strong enough, you can get out of these religions and you can lead a great life anyway. You don't need it. You don't need, you don't need it. And I enjoy community, but I'm a bit of a loner, and I don't mind living alone. I don't mind living alone. I'd be quite happy living on a desert island on my own. In fact, I'm thinking, of at some point in the future moving to a small isolated island just for the experience of living where there's absolutely nobody at all. I would really like to try that out for, say, a year, build up some supplies, and just go and live on an island with absolutely nobody there for, say, a whole year. I think that would be an amazing experience. Daniel, if I'm not mistaken, most historians confirm that there was a real person. Yeah, Daniel, I'm absolutely with those historians. I believe that Jesus did exist. I believe that the Gospels are most likely based on some very charismatic figure, some very special figure, Jesus, or some similar kind of name from those times. Yeshua ben Joseph, I think his name was. So yeah, I've got no problem at all accepting that Jesus did exist. I've got problems with some of with the claims, which are extraordinary: virgin birth, miracles, the resurrection, the raising of Lazarus from the dead, that kind of thing. But apart from that, yeah, I've got absolutely no problem at all with what's claimed in the New Testament. That's not a problem for me. It's just like four main claims: the virgin birth, the miracles, the raising of Lazarus from the dead, and the resurrection. I've got no problem at all with the Gospels, except for those four claims, right? Just those four. I'm happy with the claim that Jesus existed. I'm happy with the claim that Jesus got onto a donkey or pony and rode it into Jerusalem. I'm happy with the claim that Jesus upset the money changers' tables. I'm happy with all those claims. I'm happy with the claim that Jesus came before Pontius Pilate. I'm happy with the claim that Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? I've got no problem with any of those claims. I'm not saying that I necessarily believe that they definitely happened, but if people are going to claim that, I won't waste time arguing about it. So it's just the just the central claims of Christianity, which are like, let's say, 4 pillars that the whole of Christianity rests on. Well, obviously, there's let's say 5 pillars: the existence of God, the virgin birth, the resurrection, the miracles. Okay, I say raising of Lazarus from the dead. That's not really necessary. I suppose you could say the other pillar would be original sin. So 5 pillars. Christianity rests on those 5 pillars. And if you destroyed any single one of them, Christianity could possibly come crashing down. If you destroyed the miracles, the whole lot would probably come crashing down, because really, if there were no miracles, if you could prove there were no miracles, then, well, there's probably no resurrection either. So, but this is what keeps people going. And again, in the 90s, I was sat in a church, not for any prayer or any worship. I was there for a concert performance of a piece of music. And there was a man sitting next to me talking about his religion. And he said to me, do you believe in the miracles? I said, yeah, not really. I said, what about you? He said, oh, yes, I believe in them. I've got absolutely no problem at all believing in the miracles. And I didn't reply to him. But if I could reply to him now, I would say, but why? Why do you really think they happened? Is it just blind faith on this book? Or do you have any other reason to believe that these miraculous things happened? So I'll never be able to ask that question. Okay, let's see what you're saying. Tom Thumb is saying there have been many men named Jesus. Okay, yeah, I know. The thing is, there's Roger Carrier, who's a mythicist, and there are other sort of scholars who advance the argument that Jesus could be based on many different characters. Yeah, I get that. That's certainly a possibility. I somehow think that it's possibly just one man, but it may be more than one. Let's have a look. Matt and Eve understand the warmth. They were part of it. That does not make the religion true. Stop talking garbage about Matt and Eve. Well, okay. Well, I don't know. No, actually, it was Eve today that said on the line, you can get the same from other organizations that you get from the church. So I don't think I'm entirely talking rubbish. And I've also heard Matt saying, you can leave the church and join other organizations. Yeah. So if they get the warmth, then, and they're telling people, well, you can find the same thing in other organizations, then I don't really think I'm talking garbage. And I've actually heard them say that. Tom Thumb, fuck you. You're talking rubbish. I don't need my own. I don't need my own show. I don't need my own call-in show. I enjoy what I'm doing, and this is my show. So okay, you've expressed your opinion. I'm not talking bullshit about the host. Did you watch the line today where Eve actually said to an atheist, somebody who's coming out of religion but is worried he's going to lose the community? She actually said, join some organizations, leave your religion, don't bring up your son in that poison, leave your religion. You can get the same thing from other organizations. So no, you go and watch the line where she says that. Okay, Lee Jam. As far as I know, the only evidence for Jesus existing is in the Bible. Is there any other accounts of him from the time? No, Lee Jam, no, there isn't. Everything that we know about Jesus, really, well, nearly everything is actually in the New Testament, more or less. I mean, Josephus has made some comments, so has Tacitus, only to the extent that there were Christians and this is what they believed. Some of them were put to death, etc., etc. And a lot of Christians say, oh, Josephus, he's confirmed that Christianity is true. No, he hasn't. All right, Tom Thumb, you're welcome to stay. I disagree with you. Matt and Eve have both told people to go away and go to other organizations because you can get the same thing. You know, you can get support from other communities, and they have not really talked about the warmth, the quality of warmth that you get from religion in the way that I've expressed it and the way that I'm kind of experiencing it at the moment. So I don't really think I'm talking garbage about them, but you're entitled to your opinion. Okay. It's all right. You know something? The more people that come in, the better. I want more people on this live stream. So if you want to come in and rubbish me, that's fine with me. If you tell me that I'm talking garbage or whatever, yeah, but just stay here. I need viewers. So, you know, stay on the live stream, please. The more the merrier. I'd love plenty of you to come on and tell me that I'm talking rubbish. The more of you, the better. So language of horses, I really relate to Shannon from the line. Shannon, yeah, Shannon's pretty good, you know, on the whole. Yeah, Shannon's all right. Okay, Tom Thumb. Okay, Tom Thumb, what kind of... Tom Thumb, I'd like to say to you that I don't need the warmth that I get from, you know, Christians. I don't need the warmth. Honestly, I don't need it. I'm just saying that I've been and I've seen it, but, you know, I don't need it. I can do without it. I've got people in my life. I've got people in my personal life. So honestly, I don't need it. I can do without it. And I've found friendly people in other organizations, but I'm just saying that when it comes to shared religion, there's something extra that you get. And if you've not had it and if you've not noticed the difference, then, you know, I'm sorry for you. Too bad. All right. Okay. I mean, obviously, when I say that there's warmth, all I mean is that people are very, very friendly. The smiles are bigger than you would normally see them. I mean, you in particular get big smiles. When I go to the photography club and other clubs that I've been to, you know, people are friendly. They're nice there too, but you don't get this kind of extra that you get in religious organizations. And I've had it not only in a Christian church. As I said, I was into meditation and New Age mysticism in the 90s, and I got a similar kind of thing from those people as well. It was different. It was a different kind of warmth from them. And to be honest with you, I wasn't always entirely comfortable with it. One thing I like about Christians is they've got that warmth and they're friendly, but they know how to keep their distance. And I like that. They know how to keep their distance. That's a good thing. Because with the New Age mysticism people, be one with everything, be one with the existence. Those who are into alternative therapies, you know, they wear sort of handmade kind of knitted multicolored tops. You know, the kind of people that I'm talking about. And they want to give you a hug and everything. I'm not into that. No, thank you. I don't want that. I like to keep my own body zone. I don't, you know, I don't want people coming and hugging me. I mean, unless it's a really attractive woman. I don't want people coming and hugging me. Thank you very much. So that's what I like about a kind of Christian community. They know how to keep their distance, and that's great. Okay, let's see what you're saying then. I hope somebody will tell me that I'm talking rubbish or something, because they're the kind of comments I like that I can respond to. So Lee Jam says, I would have thought if a guy was going around performing miracles or even causing grief for the Romans, that he would have got at least one mention somewhere. Yeah, well, that's the thing. And one thing I don't understand about Jesus and the claim that he rose from the dead and there were 500 people that saw him is that there are no contemporary accounts. Like, you would have thought that out of those 500 that had seen Jesus alive after he was dead, some would have got the news out, and we would have seen some reports in contemporary documents that, wow, this man who was crucified was seen living just 3-4 days later. You would have thought there'd be something, but no. And no, and the other supposed miracles that happened and everything else, there is absolutely nothing contemporary for when they happened. There's nothing there. We've got to wait like 20 years. And there was this supposed oral tradition before we see the letters of Paul and then the Gospel of Mark, etc. All right, let's have a look. Tom Thumb. All right. All this is based on your experience. You don't get a hand job and you are disappointed. Good one. I like that. A hand job from the right person would be a very nice thing indeed, Tom Thumb. Yeah. And to be honest with you, there probably are one or two Christians in there that I would take a hand job from. But I think that it's probably not a good idea to try and realize that ambition. I think that I'll probably keep that desire inside myself. Okay, Tom Thumb, hey, I like you. Just don't talk stupid about what Matt and everything I've watched. Well, you know something, Tom Thumb, if you think I've made a mistake there, no, you can just say, Stuart, I think you're wrong there, because Matt has actually said, I mean, look, I've been watching Matt for years as well. Yes, I do recall in the past he said that he's had a lot of support and warmth from the organizations that he's been in. He's felt something. Yeah, I do recall that. It was mainly Eve today that, implied that this particular person, this caller, could get the same or similar from other organizations. So, look, Tom Thumb, I'm willing to admit that I might be wrong about that. Okay, it's not a big deal. I'm not like saying, okay, the miracles happened, the resurrection happened. You might well be right, and maybe I'm wrong. It's not a big deal for me to admit that. Maybe I got it wrong, and if I did, I hold my hand up. I'll be listening in the future for what they've got to say about that. So, okay, Fekinel, the warmth is called love bombing. Yeah. Okay. Right. I can't believe it. I'm going to be up all night at this rate. I'm supposed to be talking about that 3-hour show, The Line. But let me just say a couple of other things. Just very, I want to get these in quickly. Okay, I've done videos about the Tates before. Andrew and Tristan Tate. I've done very critical videos on them. One of them is a Christian, the other one is a Muslim. I have to say, I don't like them very much. I mean, I don't like the way they talk, and they've got poor reasons. They haven't given good reasons, in my opinion. The reasons that they've given for being believers are very poor. I mean, Andrew Tate said that he went for Islam. Effectively, he said, because it's a principle of religion. It knows the difference between right and wrong, and it doesn't change. Whereas Christianity has changed with time, and therefore it's a false religion. Islam is true because it doesn't change. In Islam, homosexuality was wrong then, and it's wrong now. Same-sex marriage was wrong then, and it's wrong now. It's not changing. It's not affected by modern-day wokeism, and therefore this tells him that it's the true religion. Well, I mean, it may well be true that it hasn't changed and that it's a religion of principle, but that doesn't mean that the religion's true. Okay, so anyway, with the Tates, the British police have actually started a civil case against the Tates, who are currently in Romania. And the British police have stated that Andrew and Tristan Tate are both serial tax evaders. And they owe the British Treasury apparently millions of pounds in value-added tax and income tax. They've also, the Tates have boasted that they don't pay tax, and the British police have started proceedings against them in the civil court to recover millions of pounds for the taxpayer. So, I mean, Andrew Tate's saying that he's gone with Islam because of all the morality, etc., etc., etc. And yet here we see he's admitting that he's a tax evader, and tax evasion is a crime in the UK. He doesn't pay his taxes, but other people pay their taxes. So I don't get that he's really a moral person. So he thinks that other people should pay taxes, but he doesn't think that he should have to pay tax. So all this money that he's made out of his Cam Girls website, he wants to keep it all. He doesn't want to pay any of it at all in tax. He just wants to spend it on Rolex watches, expensive, beautiful women, Porsches, Ferraris, expensive houses, swimming pools. Okay, so I just thought I would put that out there. That's the latest on the Tates. Okay, so Dawkins, I watched a debate between him and Rowan Williams. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that now. I'll have to talk about that another time. Okay, just very briefly, at the last weekend, I was invited by my girlfriend to an event. Now, it wasn't a religious event. It was an event at a fire station in the UK. It was on Saturday. It was an all-day event. And it was basically mainly for children. It was child-oriented. They were inviting people to come in. They set up various stalls, etc., and interesting things for children to do. They had an ambulance man and a lifesaver there showing how to do CPR, and they were teaching children CPR. I mean, actually, it was a really good event. There was a choir there, and there was a DJ, and yeah, it was quite a fun event. But one thing that I noticed at this event is that there was free food. Okay, so how is this related to religion? I'll tell you how. There was free food. I couldn't believe my eyes. There was free. There were stalls set up with tents and everything. A bit of an issue there. Okay, let me just go on. Yeah, so there were stalls, and they were giving away free food, free burgers, free hot dogs, free salads, free drinks. And I thought, this can't be true. There were hundreds of people there, right? And I looked very carefully at what the organization was that was doing this, and they call themselves first responders. They look very professional. And so anyway, well, of course, I went and had a free meal. I had a hamburger with salad, with mustard and everything else, and a drink as well. And then I went and asked them, I said, look, this is amazing, free food. This is fabulous, but who's paying for this? And they said, oh, we're paying for it. Our members finance everything. I mean, come on, how many of you guys have been to events where free food is being given away? I mean, food, burgers, free burgers, and as many as you want. It wasn't even like you get your hand stamped and you can't come back. You can have as many as you want. I only had one, by the way. Yeah. So I said, yeah, where's all this coming from? They said, oh, we finance it ourselves. I'll just get you the manager and he'll tell you all about it. I said, well, no, it's okay. Don't go to any trouble. I don't need to speak to the manager. Who are you people? And they said, oh, we call ourselves, we're first responders. We come out and we do, we feed people where it's necessary. We come out to events. I said, well, what sort of thing? For example, they said, oh, there was a fire at a hotel recently, and the fire engines had to go out there in the middle of the night. And we went out very quickly, and we did a pop-up sort of grill with hamburgers and everything, and we fed the firemen. I said, well, what can I say? Well done, great. But I said, who are you exactly? What's what's behind your organization? Is it just private individuals funding you? And then they said, oh, we're a Christian organization. Oh, right. Okay. Got it. Got it. You're a Christian organization. One thing that did surprise me is that all the paraphernalia, all the posters and everything they had around, there was no mention of them being a Christian organization. And I didn't see them handing out Bibles. I didn't see them handing out any religious literature. So, okay, I don't believe in the existence of God. And I mean, overall, if Christianity died out and people stopped believing, I would think on balance, that would be a good thing for the world. But I had to admit that, they were doing a good job, and I was amazed with the job that they were doing. And there was a photographer there taking photographs of the whole thing. And I had a chat with him. And yeah, I mean, he told me who they are. I'll try and think if I can remember the name. He said that the church behind this particular organization is called the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. Okay, Plymouth is a city on the Devon coast, the south coast of the UK, of Great Britain. And he said this church had started off, and it had grown. It seemed that they're quite a fundamentalist kind of church, and I don't know. I've not looked them up yet. I must look them up to find out how on earth they managed to build themselves up to such a stage that they could put on such an incredible, I mean, it was quite a significant presence that they had there, and I didn't see them promoting their religion. So yeah, by the way, that particular photographer, he lives in the same town as me, and I didn't discuss my beliefs with him, lack of belief, because it looked to me like he was a Christian. But if I happened to bump into him, I don't live in a big town. There's only like 40,000 people. If I happened to bump into him in the town centre, he seemed like quite a friendly person. I'll invite him for a coffee, and I'll sit down. I'll talk religion with him, and if I do, I'll report back. Okay, let me just see what you're saying. Yeah, let's see. Tom Thumb. Oh my God. Otangelo. So the origin of the universe is a free lunch. Yeah, good one. Everything is designed except his magic genie. What do you mean, Daniel? What does the universe needs no cause? Yeah, well, that's the thing. And yeah, I mean, this is a big thing for Christians and for theists, that it's hard to comprehend that there wasn't a first cause and uncaused cause. That really takes some accepting. Once you've accepted that, then atheism can come really easily. Okay. I can see that some of you are chatting to each other, so I'll have to try and just quickly skim through to see if any of these address me. Theists argue the universe can't come from nothing. Yeah, I know, they assert that. And I mean, Stephen Hawking has proposed a theory whereby the universe could literally pop into existence out of nothing. So it's really fascinating stuff. I don't say God made it from. Oh yeah. Are you a recent convert to atheism, Tom Thumb? You're a very angry boy. Yeah, I mean, one thing is, being angry does not mean being wrong. So, I mean, that's the thing with Matt. A lot of the time he's angry. That doesn't mean that he's wrong. He's mostly right, nearly always right, probably. Special pleading. Just give me a moment while I just have a quick look through these. Are you going to be on the line? No, Kayla Martin, I'm not going to be on the line. To be honest with you, Kayla, I don't think that Jimmy and Matt approve of what I'm doing with the reaction videos that I do. I've been in touch with Matt. I've actually sent him a donation based on the first year's income I got from my monetization. I actually sent him a donation because I think it was a decent thing to do. I sent him a certain percentage of the money that I earned, and he wasn't terribly friendly. He said he would accept the donation, but I mean, talk about warmth. He gave me an icicle back. I sent him my donation, and I haven't been in touch with him since. Right. Okay. So no, I wouldn't be going on the line anyway. But what I would be interested in doing with my own channel, what I would really like to do is maybe get somebody else um, like myself with a channel. I won't have anybody on my channel that is not a YouTuber who is similar at least to myself, with at least a few thousand subscribers. I'd be willing to collaborate with somebody and maybe do a discussion. I'd be quite happy to get a Christian on here, and there'd be two of us having a debate or a discussion about our differences, and then there'd be a live chat. That's something I would be interested in doing if I can find the right person. I don't want somebody who's going to say, right, Stuart, let's see what you've got for atheism. What can you prove? I don't want anybody that's terribly sort of arrogant. Um, I'd be looking to sort of have a discussion with somebody who is relatively friendly, because I'm not a debate animal like Matt, and I've not really done it before, and I don't know how good I would be. So, but I would be interested in doing that. But as for going on the line and taking calls, no, I wouldn't do that. Okay. Otangelo Grasso, no, I won't. I won't, unfortunately, have you on my. I won't do anything with you. I've been to your channel, and how many subscribers have you got? Because unless you've got a few thousand subscribers, similar to me, then it's got to be somebody around about my sort of level. I mean, in terms of the number of subscribers, not my sort of credibility or anything. Okay. Really? Well, on the God tour. Okay, I'll take a look at your channel then, Otangelo. I'll take a look at your channel and see how you present yourself. And if I'm interested in collaborating with you, then I'll be in touch. I presume that you've got an email address or something. Yeah, I might be interested. I think I looked at one of your channels, and I saw like 50 subscribers. Maybe it's somebody else. I don't know. Because somebody was. Oh no! Sorry, it wasn't you. It was somebody else. I can't remember. It was somebody who was being particularly unpleasant on the live chat, and he challenged me to go and look at his argument for the existence of God, and then feedback. And I went to his channel, and he had like 28 subscribers, and he hardly had any material. So, okay, all right. Look, I'm now going to talk about the calls that went to the line on Sunday night. Let's go through them in no particular order, because I've made notes here. You can see I've made notes. So here we go. David called in. He claimed, so it's Matt and Eve. I've not actually watched Eve's channel. I've only ever seen her on the line. So I must, I think generally speaking, Eve is quite good on the line. Her replies and her critical analysis of what people are saying is generally quite good. So yeah, David came on and he claimed about the Bible that the Bible's been wrongly interpreted. Okay, well, we often hear this, and I've had Christians tell me, because when I've communicated with Christians on Facebook groups or YouTube, and I've made a comment on the Bible, what Christians believe, the salvation, that Jesus is the only path to salvation, etc. I've had a Christian say to me, "Oh, you're going off your own interpretation." And he said, people often do that and they get it wrong. Well, that's the question. And Matt asked the question. We've got two Christians who've both interpreted the Bible differently. How do we tell which one is right? Well, that's the whole point of interpretation, that you can't prove that any particular interpretation is any more correct or wrong than any other interpretation, really. Well, I suppose that there are way off the mark interpretations. which are kind of demonstrably untrue. But you can interpret, that's the problem with these religious texts. And that's why there are so many different denominations, because all the different interpretations, and there's no real good objective way of saying which interpretation is the correct one. And even if you get an interpretation, say on the New Testament, somebody will turn around and say, well, have you gone back to the Greek, the original? And then you say, well, yes. They'll say, well, which edition? You know, you can go on and on and on with these things. So, yeah. And of course, he ended up admitting, yeah, he made the ridiculous statement. And he made the ridiculous statement, well, you don't need to, he said the Bible interprets itself, which Matt said, and he's absolutely right. He said that's nonsense, because the Bible is a book and it can't interpret itself, that human beings interpret the Bible. And he was absolutely spot on with that. Yeah, so yeah, the Bible doesn't interpret itself. Hey, Otangelo, I'll just say to you that I won't be answering any questions now because I'm going through, this is going to be quite an intense session and I'm already feeling tired because I've already spoken for what, an hour. Okay, so the Bible interprets itself. Yeah, you can discuss with others in the chat room, Otangelo, but I won't be able to do it because I'm going through these calls on the line. Okay, so that's nonsense. The Bible doesn't interpret itself. And he couldn't say why one interpretation is correct and another one is wrong. He kind of appealed to personal experience and one's feeling and intuition that one interpretation is correct. And when Matt ruled and said, well, this is no good because we won't make any progress like this, this Christian replied to Matt, I'm really sorry, brother. And then he laughed. You know, I'm really sorry that I couldn't help you and that you don't get it. And then Matt came back and said, okay, I'll give you one more chance. By what mechanism can we interpret the words on the page? And he couldn't answer that. Oh, yeah. And then he said, you've all got the Old Testament wrong, because God is not God. God is really the devil. Well, I've heard this before. And then Matt just said, I'm going to hang up on you now because, you know, I'm not going down that road. And then he finished off saying, too bad. I'm sorry for you, brother. And that was it. He'd gone. He was gone. I generally find that if somebody calls me brother, and they have done, I've had people call me brother, and I presume it normally means that somebody is religious, probably a Christian, and they'll call me a brother in that sense. I remember a Clint Eastwood film, High Plains Drifter, where the priest came to him and called him brother. And he said to Clint Eastwood, brother, this is not right. You can't do this. And Clint Eastwood said, I'm not your brother. Well, I'm not going to say that to anybody that calls me brother, but no. I mean, I've got two brothers in my life, and that's it. I mean, real brothers, you know what I mean? Okay, so that was him gone. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, Nick called in, somebody from Germany. All right, so Nick called in with physics, and yeah, Nick called in with physics, and what else? Well, he thought he called in with physics anyway. He called in saying that most physicists agree that energy is eternal and life can't come from non-life. And if energy is eternal, it must mean that there's always been a quantity of energy in existence, and it must have some kind of source, and that life can't come from non-life, and that it follows that this eternal energy has got to be, the source of this eternal energy has got to be a God, and this is his evidence for the existence of God. And Matt said to him, form a syllogism out of this. And the terms of the syllogism should be that energy is eternal, therefore, and in the conclusion should be, therefore, a thinking agent, which we can call God, exists. And Nick then said, oh, I didn't come here for that. Well, okay, he probably, obviously he's German, he doesn't speak English, he probably maybe didn't know what a syllogism is, and he didn't know how to construct a syllogism out of his primitive argument. So he said, I haven't come here for that. So he didn't really understand. And he ended up saying energy is eternal, therefore the source of everything is conscious energy. It didn't really follow. It didn't really make any sense. And they let him go and they moved on. Oh yeah, the deranged philosopher. That's who I was talking about. Yeah. Deranged philosopher. I thought you were going to publish for me to read a proof of the existence of God. I went to your channel. You've got about 30 subscribers. I didn't see any. I saw 4 videos that you've uploaded. One of them rubbishing Matt Dillahunty. But I didn't see any proof of the existence of God. So, okay. So yeah, Nick. All right. Let me just try and get my notes in order. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. There was something else from Nick's call. Yeah, because Nick was saying everything had a starting point, that physicists and scientists seem to agree that is the point. And that, again, there couldn't be an infinite regress. There must be an uncaused cause that was there to get this starting point going. And he asserted that there must be something eternal, as it's more logical, and that most scientists also agree with this. We often have this from theists who call in claiming that most scientists agree that, something can't come from nothing, that the universe had a cause, etc. They claim this, but when you actually go and look, first of all, you find that top-level scientists, like 94% are atheists, and no, most of the time they don't claim any of these things. Okay, right. Let me just move on. Okay, Tim called in. No, not Tim. Paul. Oh, yeah. So Paul called in saying that, okay. Paul called in saying that what we need is non-dual idealism. Okay, so we've got Platonic idealism, haven't we? Where we've got the ideal world, we've got the physical world that we live in, and that the physical world is an imperfect reflection of the representation of the ideal world, where you've got all the perfect forms, justice, beauty, etc., etc. So with Paul, he's saying that the reality is non-dual idealism. All is oneness. So there are not 2 realms. No, there's only one realm, and this is it. Everything is oneness, but here's the catch. Everything is mental. Everything is well, that's what he said. Everything is mental. Everything is, I suppose it comes to what Deepak Chopra argues, that reality and everything in it is nothing but a human construct, is nothing but a construct of the mind. This claim that remains a claim and seems to me fairly absurd. So Matt countered him and said, well, what about an oxygen atom? And Matt was saying that when he was in hospital, he was given an oxygen mask and he was breathing in oxygen atoms. And are those oxygen atoms merely a reflection of a mental state, or are they actually real atoms? And then he replied with, well, they're physical, but the physical is representational on a mind state. Of course, he's making these assertions without any evidence. Yeah, and he's talking about relative reality. Okay, well, it all smacks of Deepak Chopra and New Age mysticism, really. So that. Oh yes, Matt did. Sorry, it's difficult reading from my notes because I kind of scribbled them down as I was working. But I mean, I spent 3 hours listening to the program. So yeah, Matt asked the question, and which I thought was a really good question, a really, really good question. He asked the question, can we investigate? I've written it down because I thought it was so good. Can we investigate any reality other than relative reality? In other words, the reality that you claim is all that exists, relative reality. Can we investigate any reality other than relative reality? And the caller said, I'll have to think about that, but I don't think so. And then what he's saying is that the only reality that there is relative reality. And Matt said, I don't know, take your esoteric bullshit elsewhere. So that was the end of that. Okay. Yeah, Deepak Chopra. Well, look, you've got to hand it to him. He's worth $150 million. And since the 90s, he's written tens of thousands of words on this subject. And people buy into it. People will pay money to read that stuff. Okay, look, I haven't read that stuff myself. If I can get a secondhand copy for a low enough price, I'll read some Deepak Chopra and, I'll feed back here. But I watched Professor Dave's takedown on Deepak Chopra and New Age mysticism. Superb video. I'd recommend it. And I actually did a video on it, on his comments. So I've not read any Deepak Chopra yet. So yeah, so he went away. Okay, then we had Alexander, who called in. Yeah, okay, so this comes back to what I was talking about when I said that Matt and Eve possibly didn't appreciate, or were rather redirecting somebody who was leaving religion to other organizations, implying that they might find the same level, the same qualities in those organizations. So yeah, Alexander called in saying that he goes to church and that he said the people are wonderful. Yeah. And he kind of still believes in God. And Matt asked him, tell me about the God that you believe in. And he said he believes that God is a collection of cosmic powers. That was his definition of God. And Matt said, well, that's not really much of a definition because you've not really given any attributes, characteristics of God. And this is my problem as well with, when I ask people, describe your God. And I mean, the funny thing is unicorns, okay, we're all agreed they don't exist. I know that definitively we can't prove that unicorns don't exist, but I think most people would agree that unicorns don't exist. But yet you could describe one. It's a four-legged creature, a quadruped that looks a bit like a horse, but with a horn in the middle of its forehead, a kind of twisted horn in the middle of its forehead. but you can't describe God. Okay, they say, well, God hasn't got any physical characteristics. Okay, well, what kind of characteristics does God have? And then we get he's omnipresent, he's omnipowerful. I mean, they're kind of not characteristics either, because omnipresent, you're just saying that. I mean, if somebody was asked to describe me, they wouldn't be saying, well, he can move around, he can walk, or he can be in his house, or he can be on the street. That's not describing me. That's describing what I do, isn't it? So when you're describing God, saying he's omnipresent, you're just saying that God can be anywhere. You're not describing the God. And when you're saying that God's omniscient, knows everything, again, you're not really describing what the God is like. You're just saying what the God can do. The God knows everything. He's got this power of, say, infinite knowledge. And omnipotence is all powerful. Again, somebody says, well, describe Stuart. Okay, say I could lift a 200-pound weight. I mean, I can't, but let's say I could. And they said, well, you can lift a 200-pound weight. That's not describing my characteristics. It's describing what I can do. So, because people seem to have no imagination for describing their God, they always go back to the omnis, the three omnis. Not really a good description. And here, collection of cosmic powers. So what are these cosmic powers? It's going to be the same thing, isn't it? It's going to be the three omnis. So anyway, okay, well, Matt kind of let that go. And he said, okay, well, why do you think this God exists? And he said, well, personal experience, because of feelings that I've had. And he said he'd had one particular experience. And now this is where it gets interesting. I do apologize to you, because what I've been saying so far has probably not been that interesting, but I like it when people really get down to a particular experience that their religion rests on, because that's what we can really comment on. If somebody says, I had a warm, fuzzy feeling, or as my stepmother said when she had a child in her early 40s, she was an atheist and she became a Christian. I said, what made you change your mind? You were an atheist. And she said, because, I had my son and he was such a beautiful boy. I was in bed one night in the dark, lying down, and I just suddenly felt, God come all over me. I suddenly felt the warmth of the Holy Spirit and everything. And I just knew there was a God. That's the kind of evidence we get from a lot of believers. What can I do with that? I haven't had that experience. Maybe she's mistaken. Maybe that experience was caused by something else and not a God. But this is what we normally get. However, coincidences. People are impressed with coincidences. And there are a lot of people that believe because of some freak coincidence they've had in their life. And Alexander told about this particular coincidence. He said that when he was in school, I think he called it lower high school, or I don't know. He was in high school in America. Yeah. He was in high school and there was a bully boy, making his life miserable. I don't know how, he didn't say. One day, as Alexander says, he took a weapon concealed into the school to take care of this bully boy once and for all. And he went up to this bully boy with this concealed weapon. To be fair, he didn't call it a weapon. I think he called it an object. But I'm guessing that it was a knife. Okay, maybe it was a gun. It's America. Maybe it was a gun. I don't know. I suppose if you want to kill somebody, using a gun is probably a surer way to do it than using a knife. So it seems that he went up to this bully boy, and as he was approaching him, suddenly he heard his name called out on the school loudspeaker. He heard his name called out, and it was his outside therapist who had come into the school for the first time ever and was calling his name out on the loudspeaker to come to the principal's office. And when he heard this, he immediately stopped what he was doing and he went to the principal's office. And of course, he never carried out the deed. And for him, this was some kind of communication from God that saved him from doing a destructive thing, saved his life more or less, because let's face it, if he was carrying a gun and he'd taken it out and shot this boy in the head or whatever and killed him, he would have been serving life. He would have been serving life imprisonment, or maybe even executed. I don't know which state he would have done this in. And so for him, this was a sign from the Lord God and was proof to him that God exists, right? Okay. Now, Eve and Matt made very good points. What they said was, look, we appreciate why you think that. However, where was God at the Columbine massacre? God saved you, and God saved that boy, saved one life. Where was God when the Columbine massacre took place and all those pupils died? And he replied, actually, I never thought about it like that, but yeah, nobody's ever put that to me. That's a very good point. So Matt then went on to say, you understand that human beings are pattern seekers and that this fortunate coincidence, there was a good chance that you would take this as a sign, as a kind of sign indicating that there'd been some divine intervention. People often look for reasons when a coincidence like this happens. They look for a reason behind it when it might just be a sheer coincidence that it happened. And in your case, very fortunate. But where was that same intervention that could have saved so many other lives? And if you think about all the school shootings we've had, and the McDonald's shooting, for example, in the 80s, was it? And all the tragedies that happened, where was God then? And yeah, he absolutely took that point on board. In addition to that, though, I would say, personally, this is me, not Matt speaking, he mentioned he had an outside therapist that had come in. This tells me that he had a therapist, he's at school, and he's got a therapist, he's having therapy for something. For what? Is it possible that in his last therapy session, he was externalizing some of his concerns about being bullied and that he was having violent thoughts? Who knows? Maybe yes, maybe no. And the reason that the outside therapist was at the school was to come in and warn the principal that there's trouble brewing. This boy is being bullied and he might do something desperate. And that if Alexander had pieced this together, and if that had been the case, and that there was a completely rational explanation for the fact that the outside therapist was in the school, then he might not have been led into a delusional belief. Okay, so I thought that was quite a good call. He went away and that ended on a really kind of positive note, and the call was handled really well. Okay, let me see what else we've got. I might not do all of them. Yeah, I've done those. Yep, I've done that one. What have we got here? No. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Somebody called Anders called in. Actually, I'm just going to have a quick look at your chats. Let's see. We've got Daniel. He's saying quite a lot. People are suckers. That's why evangelists have private jets. Yep, agree with that. Yeah. Only people who have decided to put their trust in Jesus have experienced a transformation. People who have not done that on the outside looking in. Look, Daniel, I don't deny that, people whose lives have been in the gutter have discovered religion and have given their lives over to Jesus, and that they've come to salvation through Jesus, and that their lives have improved immeasurably. I don't deny that at all. And I don't deny that religion can be useful, and in some circumstances it can help people. I don't deny that for one moment. The only thing I've got problems with, I don't have problems with that claim. I accept what you say, but I don't accept that there's a living Jesus, and I don't accept any of the extraordinary claims from the Bible, the resurrection, that a God exists, or anything like that. There are Muslims. I've done conversion stories about Muslims who've said, praise be to Allah, praise to the Prophet. My life changed since I discovered Islam. Does that make Islam true? No. Religions can sort of help people. I've already indicated that there are very good, strong communities that make people feel good and give them a lot of support. But the only thing that concerns me is not whether religion's useful, whether it can transform people's lives, whether it can transform individuals. None of that's of any interest to me, because none of that will tell you whether a religion is actually true. Okay. Lee Jam, an old guy on a podcast in need of some interior decoration services. Yeah, I could do with somebody coming and painting my apartment. Lee Jam, yeah, my stepmother, yeah, she said that she first kind of felt God, yeah. I must say that she's now an atheist. The son that she brought up that made her feel like she'd been touched by the Holy Spirit, he grew up into quite a militant atheist, and he deconverted her. Isn't that funny? Because when I saw her 2 years ago, for the first time in a couple of decades, I said to her, "Do you still believe in God?" And she said, "No." Like, oh my God, I was completely crazy for believing in all that stuff. No, she's an atheist now. She's got cancer as well. And, she's on chemotherapy continually, and she's still an atheist. At least as far as I know. Maybe she's converted. Maybe she's reconverted because she's got cancer. I don't know. I'll have to try and find out. Okay. Lots of people transform their lives without Jesus. Quite. Yes, that is the case. Jesus is the best gardener I've ever had. My hedge has never been straighter. Is that because you've got a gardener called Jesus? Imagine being called Jesus. When I was at school, when I was a teenager, there was a boy that was quite tall, very thin, had a tiny little face. And, it was in the days when a lot of teenagers listened to heavy metal, and he grew his hair, long black hair right down to his waist. And it was kind of parted like this. And this shows you how, we're talking about the 70s, late 70s. This kind of shows you that we were a lot of heathens, even, when we were at school. Everybody called him Jesus. Oh, that was funny. I wonder what happened to him. Okay, maybe he's the living Jesus. Maybe he really was Jesus, and I just missed my chance. Okay. I'll be finished in about 15 minutes. So if you've got any questions, let me know. I can't believe it. It's after 1 o'clock here in the UK. So I was up this morning at 6:30, starting to get tired, but I'll keep going. So yes, Anders called in about Peter Singer. I think Anders is an atheist. He called in about, he wanted to talk about Peter Singer and this idea that, um, we shouldn't have more money than we need. And that if we've got more money than that, we should be trying to reduce suffering in the world with it. So we shouldn't have any luxuries or, anything like that. We should be diverting all our surplus wealth to third world hunger, the poor, the suffering, etc., cancer research, and etc. And Anders wanted to know from Matt what he thinks of this position. Well, first of all, he said he's noticed that Singer is wearing very smart clothes, and he can maybe wear cheaper clothes. Well, I mean, why not? Why not? I mean, if you're going to really extend the argument and say, well, we should not have absolutely one morsel more than we need just to sustain ourselves in living, and we should divert all excess wealth to charity. That's the only way we can avoid being evil human beings. That seems to be Singer's argument, unless I've got it hopelessly wrong. Yeah, so Matt came back on this and he said, well, he said that he believes in doing good and he believes in reducing world suffering, but that he didn't necessarily believe that it was necessary to divert all excess wealth and deprive oneself of every single enjoyment and luxury in order to prevent suffering in the world. Because he said that, for example, with the work that he's doing, I mean, to be honest with you, I think this was a little bit contrived, but anyway, I'll tell you what his argument was. He said that in order for him to do the work that he does, the good work, in other words, raising his snakes, breeding rodents to feed them, don't laugh. Okay, no, honestly, don't laugh, because that's his business. That's what he does. But also appearing on the line and spreading the good news about critical thinking and atheism and everything. He wouldn't be able to do that unless he had some of his time to himself, doing things that he could enjoy. So I think he mentioned that he went riding with Arden, and that cost money. And one could make the argument that, well, the $100 that cost could have fed people who sleep on the streets. It could have reduced suffering. But his argument is, well, I need to have a good time in order to do the hard work of getting people out of religion. Yeah, I can see how that's an argument. It's not an argument I would use myself. And I'm not really too sure how to defend properly Singer's position that we should divert all excess wealth and buy the cheapest possible food, reasonable quality, something that's just good enough, not shop expensively, not have expensive watches, have a cheap watch, etc., and send all our wealth. I mean, Singer's written a lot of books. He appears. I wonder, has he got virtually nothing in his bank account? Does he own his own property? Because I don't. I mean, I used to, but I mean, I had a divorce, so I know where my wealth went. At the end of my marriage. But I mean, I rent a flat, and I haven't. Okay, I've got some savings, and I suppose that with that money, I could send it off, and I could relieve suffering for a significant number of people, and yet I don't do it. Why? And how can I defend that? How can I defend not being extravagant with some of the things that I do? I don't think I'm terribly extravagant, but I mean, I sometimes eat out now and again, and I don't really have to do that. I sometimes go on day trips, traveling. I suppose I could just sit here, earn as much money as I can, and just simply funnel all my savings and all my excess money to charity. And that would then make me a good person, right? Maybe that's what I should do. And to be a good person, maybe that's what, I must do. and yet I'm not doing it. Why? Well, I suppose because I want to be happy and comfortable in life, and I put my happiness and comfort above other people. Does that make me an evil person? Well, according to Peter Singer, yes. And I don't really know how to counter that. So, and Matt doesn't know how to counter it either. I suppose we'll have to leave it at that and just accept that Peter Singer thinks that probably 99.9% of the world are evil people. Okay, so just moving on. Now, I had a quick look. Let me just quickly flick through these notes to make sure I've not missed anything. This is terrible. I've done that one. I've written down here. Oh, yeah. Sorry, this is an interesting one. Who was it that called in? Oh, yes. Okay, good. Aaron called in. Not Aaron, but Aaron. Why is everybody these days called either Matthew, Aaron, or Aaron? Why all these biblical names? But I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so Aaron called in. And he is claiming to Matt and Eve that in the world, we all have relationships. I've got a relationship with this mouse, right? I use this mouse. I've got a relationship with it. I've got a relationship with this beverage. I've got a relationship with my mobile phone. I've got a relationship with the air that I breathe, with all the oxygen atoms. And everything's got a relationship with everything, effectively. That's what he's saying. And that, for that reason, with God, we've also got a unique relationship. So that seems to be his claim, that we have these relationships. Okay, so somehow it moved on from there. Yeah. So yeah, Eve asked the question, about the God. So yeah, we've got relationships with everything, including this God, and that the relationship with God is the unique, special one. So Eve said, okay, so imagine we've got two people. We've got one that's got a relationship with a God that does exist, and we've got another one with a relationship with a God that doesn't exist. And how can we tell them apart? And he said, well, it comes down to personal experience. Well, we've heard this before. And he also said that the relationship that we have with God is beneficial. And we've heard this. We've heard it in the chat, people saying that it's got transformational power. Yeah. So Matt then went on to saying that we could have a relationship with a fictional character in a book, for example, or somebody could invent a fictional significant other and feel like they've got a relationship with it. But in reality, there is no other. And in the case of a God, there is no God. Then he suddenly came on. Then he suddenly said, Aaron said, he was asked, what is your God? Describe your God. And he said, my concept of God is the universe. And the question there was from Matt, if it's a relationship, there's got to be two-way communication. If you're claiming that God is the universe and there's a relationship, where's the communication? Where's the communication? How does God communicate? Because he was saying, well, the universe communicates with all of us. And how can you demonstrate that? Well, he couldn't demonstrate it. And then Matt said to him, this was the amazing part of this call. Matt asked him, are you delusional? Because you can't demonstrate anything of what you're claiming. And he answered, yes. And he more or less said, what's wrong with a delusion if it's useful to me? Well, with Matt, if you admit that that you don't care if something is true, and if you admit that you're delusional, the conversation's over. Because Matt will say, well, I want to talk with people who care about what is real. And people who are happy with delusions, I've got no interest in talking to them. And then he made one final comment before he went away. Yeah, he said, what's wrong with having an imaginary friend? Well, I mean, there could be something wrong with having an imaginary friend, I suppose, if that imaginary friend is sort of leading you down the wrong way, and if it's not real, if you're making it up, then it might well do that. But it comes down to that having an imaginary friend may be useful in the same way that Dumbo believed that the feather had some magical property. That was useful as well. But the imaginary friend is not real, and the magical properties of the feather are not real either. And that what we're interested in as atheists and skeptics is whether something is real, not whether it's useful. Oh, yeah. So he admitted he's delusional. And Matt said, well, you can go away and, you can waste your own time being delusional. And then he ended this astonishing statement. He said, well, I've got my whole life to waste if I want to. What can you say to that? Okay, so that's about... then Troy called in. Oh, yeah. You know something? There's one kind of caller that drives me crazy even more than, Christians who just won't come to the point or preamble forever. I can't stand it when atheists call in with no particular point, just to say, you guys are doing a great job. How do you do it? I could never do this. What's your secret? You're amazing, Matt. Eve, you're great too. Do you get frustrated? I mean, can you imagine? He's asking Matt Dillahunty. He's been watching him for 10 years or more. Do you get frustrated when these Christians call in? I mean, for goodness sake, how many times have we watched Matt? He gets frustrated in every single show. And Troy is calling in, an atheist, to ask him a question like this, and how do you do it? And I just hated it. I hate this kind of call. I think they gave him 10 minutes or something and diplomatically moved him on. But I mean, it was obvious that he didn't really have a serious question, because how do you do it? In fact, Matt said, have you just called in to ask how I do it? It's not a serious question. At least if you're an atheist, call in with a really good question. Don't just call in just to appear on the show and talk to the great Matt Dillahunty. That was a bit of a waste of time. So yeah, I didn't like that call. Okay, those were all the calls that I reviewed, and I'm going to be doing one or two of those, reacting to them on videos. I usually do two reaction videos a week, usually to Matt's calls. But on the other show, on the After Dark show, we had Aaron and we had Seth. And I looked very briefly at Amir's call. Now, Amir has called in before many, many times. He's a serial caller, and he always calls in with the same old God of the gaps rubbish. There can't be an infinite regress. Something can't come from nothing. He's from Britain, and he's got one of those British accents that absolutely drives me crazy. There is no American accent that drives me crazy like some of the accents we've got here, I can tell you. I mean, I'd rather have a hillbilly accent or even a Bostonian accent or anything than some of the accents that we've got in the UK. Absolutely drive me crazy, I'll tell you. And I'm not sure where Amir is from. I suspect he's from the Midlands somewhere, but I'm not too sure exactly where. But not only can I not stand his accent and the way that he talks, but his ridiculous same arguments he calls in. He's called in about 10 different times, and he's usually on for at least an hour. They usually keep him going for an hour. And he called in yet again with his God of the Gaps arguments that scientists are agreed. They agree that something can't come from nothing. This is what scientists are saying, you see. And he's going on and on with this stuff, and he's making these claims, and he just doesn't really seem to be aware of what scientists are actually saying. And by and large, a lot of them are theorizing and conjecturing and putting forward various hypotheses, but they're not saying that something couldn't have come from nothing. They're not saying that there was ever a nothing at one time. They're not making these claims. And Amir is dressing this up as if, yes, this is a done deal. This is what they're saying, and there must be an uncaused cause. So Amir, I did listen to his call. It drove me crazy listening to it. And eventually, thank goodness, they dropped him. Well done, Aaron. You should have dropped him way before that. If Amir calls in again, honestly, don't let him on, because, and this is the thing, people have said, in fact, Matt has said he does this show not only for the caller, but so that other people can listen to the arguments. And with Amir, you'd think that with all the calls he's done and all the rebuttals he's had and all the excellent analysis he's had on his arguments, that he would have made some progress and dropped some of this nonsense, but he hasn't. He just calls in with the same stuff time and time again. So they dropped him and moved him on, thank goodness, because he was driving me crazy. And that was it. That's all the calls I'm going to do. I've done nearly 2 hours. So let me just have a look. I'll be signing off in about 5 minutes. I'll have a quick look at your comments. So Lee Jam, if it's a living God, then maybe simultaneous messages on radio, TV, and mobile phones across the planet. Well, I always say to Christians, and I will say to any Christian, pray to your God. If your God exists, that I could be convinced by some means that your God exists, I'll become a Christian and I'll be on here denouncing my atheism. Daniel, what's wrong with the Bible? There you have it in writing. Okay. Okay, well, I'm signing off now. Thank you very much for being with me. 20 past 1. I've been up since 6:30 in the morning, so that's, I think I'll be going to sleep fairly quickly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being with me. Those of you who've been with me, I don't know how long. Some of you guys have been with me for these whole 2 hours, so you deserve something. I don't know what. I don't know. Go and buy yourself a nice cold beer or something if it's a hot day. Not on me though. Just enjoy a beer or whatever you like. And it's been nice to have you with me. And you know, it's nice to have you following my channel. I'm going to say goodnight to you now, and I'll be back again soon. Probably, I've had more of you watching at this time than I normally get when I do it later in the evening. So I might make this a regular time, but it will probably be a Monday next week. The only reason I didn't do a show or a live stream yesterday is because it was Monday yesterday. I spent the weekend with my girlfriend. We woke up on Monday morning and the weather was absolutely stunning. And I looked at the forecast and it's raining for the rest of the week. And I decided to take a day off work. And we went out for the day. She's got a child. We went out. We went to a beautiful island, Scottish island, had an amazing time. And I got back too late to do any kind of stream. So, but normally I would do it on a Monday. So most likely next Monday I'll be doing a stream. This time, midnight again, 11:30 British Summer Time. So anyway, yeah, thank you very much. Good night. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you to everybody who's participated in the chat. And if I was wrong about anything, and one can be wrong, and you know something, there's no shame in admitting you're wrong. I may have been wrong about Matt and Eve, that yes, they've come out of religions and they would understand better than me probably that there's a lot of warmth coming from the community. And if I was wrong to imply that they wouldn't understand that warmth, I hold that my hand up. I admit I was wrong about that. But I'll tell you something, I'll tell you what I'm not wrong about. I'm not wrong to say that there's no good convincing evidence for the existence of any God. That's one thing I don't believe that I'm wrong about. Even if I'm wrong about other things, I believe that my atheism is well justified. That's all for now. Thank you very much, and good night.